Today's lesson is on place value and decimals. So students will represent decimals in expanded form. Let's begin here with a quick warm-up exercise. Find the number that makes the fractions equivalent. So in A, we're given 3/7, which is equal to 6 what? So how did we get from 3 to 6? Well, the numbers are increasing, and it has to be multiplication. So 3 times what gives you 6? Well, 3 times 2 would. So what you do to do the top, you have to do the bottom. So 7 times 2 is equal to 14. So we can say that 3/7 is equal to or equivalent to 6/14. I want you to do B, C, and D as warm-up on your whiteboards, and then you're going to resume your screencast. Earlier this year, we learned that we use place value to write numbers. So if you forget, this is the place value chart. At the beginning of the year, we only would have looked at this first half. We haven't dealt with decimals yet. So remember, first numbers, ones, tens, hundreds, thousands, 10,000s, 100,000s, etc. So if we have the number 5,834, in expanded form, this would look like 5,000 plus 800 plus 30 plus 4. So we use place values to write numbers. That means that where a digit is placed in the number tells you its value. So because in this number, the digit 5 is in the thousands place, it has to be worth 5,000. Now, here's some exercises for you to complete on your whiteboard. What does the digit 7 represent? So in the number 6,742, the 7 represents 700. Now, I want you to do B, C, and D, and then you're going to resume your screencast. So it's important to understand that the place value system extends to include decimals. So we have thousands, hundreds, tens, ones that we've dealt with. And as we go, the place values get 10 times as big. So when we go from ones to tens, we are multiplying by 10. When we go from tens to hundreds, you're multiplying by 10. When you go from hundreds to thousands, you're multiplying by 10. Now, how do I continue this system so I can use place value as fractions too? Well, what is 1 times as big as? Sorry, what is 1 10 times as big as? So 10 of what make 1 whole? Well, 10 parts make a whole. So 1/10 would make a whole, or 1/10 would be that. So let's look at that in a picture. So here, what do these pictures show? This shows 1/10 of a whole. This shows 1/10 of a whole, and this shows 1/10 of a whole here. So there's a way to show 1/10 that uses place value as well. So we can use 1/10 as a decimal would be equal to 0.1 or 0.1. 3/10 would be the same as saying 0.3. 8 and 3/10. Now we have a whole number in front. So we have 8 wholes, decimal 3/10. And then 27 and 4/10 would be 27 as the whole number, decimal 4/10 because it's 4 parts. So decimals are just like mixed numbers. So let's do these exercises on your whiteboards here. You're going to write the decimal for the number. So if you have 5/10, you're writing the decimal. So it's going to be, we don't have any wholes, there's no whole number in front. So it's going to be 0.5 for 5/10. Now I want you to do B, C, and the bonus on your whiteboards, and then you're going to resume your screencast. So we can also extend the place value system beyond tenths. So we have hundreds, tens, ones. This is where your decimal would be. We have tenths. Then we can also extend it past that. So 10 of what fit into a tenth? So there's some sort of symmetry in the place value names. So to some extent, they mirror each other, which means they reflect each other on both sides of the one. So 1 is kind of your center point. Then you have tens and tenths, hundreds, and then on this side, you're going to have hundredths as well. Take note of the THS at the end when we're talking about decimals. So let's look down here. We have 100, which is similar to saying 1/100th is a decimal. We have 10, which is similar to saying 1/10 as a decimal. So there's your symmetry that I was talking about. There's also symmetry in the values. So we're going to write decimals for each of these fractions. So if I have 3/100ths, how I would write that would be 0 decimal. I have 0/10ths here, so I need a 0, and then a 3 in the hundredths place because I'm dealing with hundredths. When I'm talking about 8/1000ths, then my 8 needs to go into the thousandths place. So I'm going to have 0 decimal 008. So the next place value after the decimal is tenths, hundredths, then thousandths. So now I want you to complete these exercises on your whiteboard, writing the decimal for the fraction. Let's do A together before you get started. So 7/100ths is equal to saying 0.07. The 7 has to go into the hundredths place value. Remembering that you have the decimal, you have tenths, hundredths, thousandths is your place values to remember. When you're done completing A to E on your whiteboards, you're going to resume your screencast. So we can express decimal fractions in different ways. So there's 2 ways to say this number out loud. So we could say 0.03, and we could say 3/100ths. We use the second way to spell the number in words on paper when you're asked to put it into words. So let's look at these decimals. Let's look at these examples, and you're going to write the decimals in words. So for A, if I was asking you to write this in words, 0.04 would be the same as saying 4/100ths, because the 4 is in the hundredths place value. I want you to do B, C, D, and E on your whiteboards, and then you're going to resume your screencast and carry on with your lesson. So when we're writing a decimal with more than one non-zero digit, we need to know how to do this. So read the place value. We have 9 plus 6/10ths plus 7/100ths. So when we write this number out, we have 9.67. So how do the place values in the decimal correspond to the expanded form? So when we're saying this number out loud, we could say that we have 9 ones. The 9 is in the 10th place. So we could say we have 9 ones, 6/10ths, and 7/100ths. Okay, we need tenths and hundredths. We can also say this out loud as 9.67, or we can also say out loud 9.67. What we cannot say, which is incorrect to say, is 9.67. This is not 67. This is 6/10ths and 7/100ths. So when you're saying it out loud, you cannot say it as 9.67 or 9.67. That is incorrect. Now here's some decimals or some examples for you to complete on your whiteboard. You're going to write the decimal out, taking a look at this whole number out in front. So let's do A together. So we have 3 wholes. So that's going to be our ones number. Decimal, we have 4/10ths, 9/100ths. So the 4 is in the tenths column, the 9 is in the hundredths column. So this would be written as 3.4/10ths, 9/100ths. I want you to do B to F on your whiteboard, and then you're going to resume your screencast. Sometimes we need to use 0 as a placeholder. So if we have 3/10ths is 0.3. If we have 5 plus 3/10ths, the 5 goes out front as the whole number, decimal 3/10ths. But now I have 3/100ths, so I need to use 0 as my placeholder here. 0.03 There's no tenths number, so you need to put the 0 there as the placeholder. Now, if you have 5 plus 3/100ths, this would look like 5.03. You still need the 0 placeholder in front of the 3/100ths. An easy way to remember how to use your 0 placeholder is to look at the denominator of your fraction. The denominator tells you how many places after the decimal point the digit goes. So the tenths, it has 1 0. So the tenths go 1 place after the decimal point. Hundredths, if we're dealing with hundredths, it has 2 zeros, so the number's going to go 2 places after the decimals. Okay, so keeping that in mind, let's do this number here. We're going to write the decimal. So 5 tenths plus 3 hundredths, it's going to be 0 decimal. This goes 1, the 5 goes 1 place value in, and then the 3 goes 2. So 5 decimal, or 0.53. Now on this one, I have 5 tenths plus 3 thousandths. So I have 0 decimal, the 5 goes in the tenths. Now I have 0 hundredths, so I need a 0 placeholder, and then the 3 in the thousandths place. Now here are some exercises for you to do on your whiteboard, and then you're going to complete your activity afterwards. So let's look at A together. So we have 2 plus 3 hundredths. How would this look as a decimal? Well, you could write, you have 2 wholes, so the 2 becomes the ones digit. Decimal, if I look at my denominators, it has 2 zeros, which tells me the 3 has to go 2 places after the decimal. So I need my 0 placeholder, then I can use my 3. Now I want you to complete B to F on your whiteboards and then resume your screencast for the next exercise. So here we're going to write the value of the digit 6 as a fraction or a whole number. So I have 0.642 in question A. I need to look at what place value the 6 is in. The 6 is 1 digit after the 0 or after the decimal, so it's in the tenths place. So this would be a fraction of 6 tenths. Now if I look at B, the 6 is in the hundredths place. It's 2 place values after. So it would be written as 6 hundredths. Now I want you to do C, D, and E on your whiteboards, and then when you are done C, D, and E, you can continue on with jump pages 7 to 8, checking in with me when you are finished.